So I wanted to make a video kind of about a day in the life of foster care. I think a lot of people are more curious about that. There are a lot of videos about how to become a foster parent and what's expected of a foster parent, and I will link the Arizona DCS page for if you're interested in becoming a foster parent. Below they have like a video that shows all the steps that you have to go through, and it's a pretty lengthy process. It took us about 8 months, I think, from start to finish to do everything. And if you guys watch that and then you have any more questions about that, just let me know and I can clarify what it takes. And in the state of Arizona, I don't have, so every state is different. And in Arizona, this is kind of how it works. Also, when you watch that information, you'll see there's a process where you have to pick a licensing agency. We had one and then we've switched. So different licensing agencies require different things. Ours requires a ton of paperwork. Not a ton, but it's a lot of paperwork monthly, and it's more to cover yourself in case there's a question about if something happened to a child, because when you take in a foster child, they're not actually in your custody. They're the custody of DCS, and you're just allowed to care for them. So if something happens to them, you're under more scrutiny because they don't belong to you. And I can explain that more. I'll probably do another video about like the different things you can and can't do when you have foster children in your home versus like just if it was your biological child. But today we have the case manager coming out, which is our DCS caseworker. So she's the person who works for the state, and she orders most of our service, so some of our services come through DCS. And so when the girls first came into care, they needed therapy, and so she ordered that, and it got sent to a company that's where they do their therapy. She's our fourth one, so we've only had her for I think 2 months now. We've had our girls for almost a year, and like I said, she's our fourth one. So she's coming out, and then we also have what's called a high needs case manager, because our girls have some kids in foster care have behaviors that are difficult, and so they need extra coordination, and that's what a high needs case manager does, is they coordinate all the services that the girls would need. So they coordinate therapy, and they can put in referrals for things like horse therapy or like group therapy or things like that. So any kind of like other stuff. There's also like behavior coaches. Behavior coaches will come out and they'll spend time with you and the child, and they'll work strictly on modifying the behavior, as our therapy is really designed to get to the point of what's causing the behavior. So like the trauma that they've been through, whatever that may be. And those are the kind of two aspects. So if they're having a really hard time, they may have a behavior coach come in, and they may have therapy to kind of try and deal with both of those issues. There's also what's called like crisis stabilization. So if they come into a home and the child is having like really bad behaviors and you just don't know what to do, it kind of resembles like a 2-year-old temper tantrum, but sometimes these kids are like 10 or 12, or they could be younger, they could be like 4 or 5, and they just have these huge temper tantrums, and because they're so big, they can do some serious damage. And I mean, some kids will, like at this age, will try and hurt themselves, and so you call crisis stabilization, and it's usually added to the case plan, and they'll come out like once a week and hang out with you for like 5 hours. And our person, because we had it for a little while, she would come and like the whole family participated in the service, which is what I would recommend, is that the child see the whole family participate, including your biological children, if you have any. So the high needs case manager kind of helps coordinate all of that stuff. And depending on what the service is through, determines who orders it. So like DCS could order therapy, and then it gets sent to that company, and the high needs case manager coordinates for the therapist, and then any like medicine monitoring that can also happen through the high needs case manager. If they're on any kind of like mood stabilizing medicine or anything like that. So high needs case managers have to come out once a week to see the kid. They're supposed to see the kid once a week. DCS is supposed to see them once a month. And then they have their what's called a guardian ad litem, which is basically the child's lawyer. They're supposed to also see the child once a month, and your licensing agency is also supposed to see the child once a month. And then if, like with us, we have, because the girls have a high needs case manager, we also have these things called child and family team meetings. And so it's the CFT, and those happen every 30 days. So on top of all these other meetings that people are coming out to your house to see the kids, you have this extra meeting where everybody gets together, and it's kind of good because you get to talk about the case a little bit more, get some clarification, and it's a whole group of people working together to try and stabilize the children and figure out what the plan is going to be. But those child and family team meetings are mostly to help you determine how to proceed with the stabilization of the child, whether that's like a new service or new therapy, or if they're working through therapy, or if they need a new therapist, or just different kinds of things like that. And all those people that come out to your house go to that meeting as well. With me, I'm a full-time student, so I try to make sure that my classes are on certain days of the week, and then everybody else comes those days that they're not here. But the kids have to be home when all of these people come to your house, which can be difficult because with our kids, they're not really comfortable having a bunch of people, like these people in the house. They really like their high needs case manager, and they're okay with like seeing her, but they're on their 4th case manager. It makes them nervous. They don't like having them in the house because it's kind of like, okay, what's gonna happen now? What are you gonna do? And because of that, they are constantly coming out trying to find out what's going on. And depending on what the conversation is, generally, I will just let them hang out with us. Like, they just stay in the room. I tell them kind of what's going on that is appropriate, that's age appropriate for them, because they are human beings, and human beings like to know what's going on. They like to have control, and these children have very limited control over what's happening to them. So if I can keep them aware, so they know, they don't feel like, one, we're talking about them behind their back. They don't feel like their mom isn't being respected, because that's a big one for us. Their family needs to be respected in the house, and I'll do a whole nother video about that. And so, yeah, I like to have them around. Now, there are certain things that we have to discuss that they shouldn't be around for. They shouldn't hear. And so that's when it gets difficult, is like, they know that I normally will let them hang out, but if we're talking about something they don't necessarily need to know about, they're going to want to keep coming out because they know that we're talking about something that involves them, but they don't know what it is. And that's the other good thing about having a CFT, is the kids aren't at the child and family team meetings. So then at that point, you can talk more about the case and how things are going and what the plan is. So that's kind of just a look at it, is just like these are all the people that have to come out to the house. So our guardian ad litem is coming out on Friday, and then I had to reschedule our licensing agency because they couldn't make it. So I try to schedule DCS with someone else because they ask all of the same questions, and our licensing agency asks all the same questions as DCS. So I try to like line up all their appointments, and usually they're pretty good about about being here at the same time. Because they all have to see the girls, they all have to see the environment, they all have, like, the licensing agency is more making sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing, and then DCS is making sure that the kids feel comfortable and safe and stable. And the length of those meetings depends on what's going on with the case and with the girls. If the girls are having a lot of trouble, or if the case is having a lot of issues, then they can be here for a couple hours. If everything's going pretty quick and you have a like really efficient case manager, and then things just kind of flow smoothly, and it's like an hour and you're done. It can be less. Their first case manager, she was probably here for like 20 minutes at a time, and she was done. So it really just depends. sometimes they go longer with me. Like, if my husband's here, they'll be shorter. If it's just me, they go a little bit longer. But I kind of talk a little, I talk more, shocking, I know, to the staff. And I'm a really big advocate for my husband is too. Like, we're both really big advocates for the girls, but John can like get things out really concise, and sometimes it takes me a little longer to get out what I'm trying to say. So that kind of happened with our last month when our case manager was here and our licensing worker was here. I'm sorry if you guys hear airplanes. We're close to Luke Air Force Base, so that's what you're hearing right now if you hear it. Yeah, but there was some just kind of heated discussion about like, okay, the girls have been in care for 10 months now. Like, what's going to happen? Are we trying to make anything happen? Not that like John and I aren't in it for us. Like, it's time for something in the case to happen. And so sometimes as a foster parent, you have to kind of push that and advocate for that. And some people are not okay with you pointing out like, okay, these are the timelines. What's happening? Some people get a little put off by that. So yeah, so that can happen. But I mean, ultimately, it's the case manager's responsibility to make sure that everything goes in. Because what happens is before court, if you have a report and reviews, and they happen like every 3 months, so you go in and the judge basically looks over this report that DCS writes and some other documentation to determine if the case is progressing. You're usually there for like 15 minutes. It's really not that long, and it's kind of sad because it's a 15-minute snapshot. This guy gets to look at, you know, the paperwork and go, okay, this is what's happening. Or girl. The first judge we had was a girl. And so that's kind of difficult, but yeah, they have, DCS has to write this report, and so like if things are not being documented appropriately, that's something you have to kind of make sure is out there. And I'll do another video about documenting and paperwork and all the other stuff. But yeah, so that's going on. That's what's going on with us this week as far as foster care goes. So let me know if you have any questions.